Hi friends, hope everyone is staying safe and doing well. This is my video blog on ethical violations and board discipline. And I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible, but there is so much to cover and so much I found out doing this blog. So first, I'm going to answer the questions that are, what are the most common reasons for a board to discipline a counselor, my personal reaction, but I'm going to also kind of mix that in with 3 different violations that I took and answer some of the other questions while also talking about my reaction to it. So I'm going to discuss the behaviors that led to the discipline by the board, and I'm going to also discuss what the outcome of the board was when talking about the 3 scenarios, and then after that I'm going to talk about the code of ethics and some themes that I saw. So just my first initial reactions, there wasn't any entries for 2020, which makes sense. We haven't really had a lot of ground to cover since the new year. But I did find some for 2019, so I took the first 3 entries that I could find on the page from 2019, and this all came from my state's National Board of Certified Mental Health Counselors webpage. So my first reactions when reading this is that this ethics class is teaching me a lot, and I'm so thankful for it. I feel like it's challenging me in some really good ways, and I'm learning so much information, and I could see everything we've been discussing so clearly in this assignment, and how applicable the ACA codes are to the counseling profession, honestly to other counseling, or not other counseling professions, but the counseling profession and other professions as well. The ethical codes that are in place are just so applicable, I think, to a lot of different scenarios, and that was something that I really learned through doing this assignment. It's just how a great resource and tool that these codes are, and that they need to be taken seriously. And that just overall, I think if you do what the profession asks you to do and you maintain the codes and practice utter honesty in everything that you do, that will help you a lot, I think. I think a lot of these scenarios kind of showed that if there was more honesty and an understanding of the ACA, maybe these things wouldn't have happened. So the first one was a LPCA who wanted to become an LPC. And on the form, she said that she'd never had any disciplinary action taken against her. However, she is licensed by the North Carolina Substance Abuse Professional Practice Board, and when she was part of that, she gave paperwork saying that she had attended 2 trainings that she didn't, and it just talked about how she was really overwhelmed and stressed at work and life, and how she was ultimately denied her LPC licensure. She was just inconsistent in her self-care. She had a lot going on, and she didn't provide enough self-care to herself to step back from the situation and to step back from what she was doing. She just kept on, and so it made it to where she was neglecting, I think, some really important things, and she wasn't performing as well in her job as she should have been, which was something that was documented. And then another scenario I found was, again, an application to become an LPCA, and it stated on the form that she had been convicted of 2 embezzlement charges from when she was practicing law as a real estate agent 14 to 15 years before. And while she was practicing as this real estate closing attorney, she had a boyfriend that she had been with from about 6 to 7 months, and they shared an office space, and she did not take proper precautions to secure what they had independently in the office. And so basically what happened is he ended up stealing the checks that clients had given and signed her name on them. And then basically from there was a lot of blackmail that was going on. He would not return the money, and she said she was just so scared for her and her mother that she never turned him in, and she took the full plea for it. And so she pled guilty to embezzlement and had to do restitution. So she had to pay a lot of money back, and which which she did eventually pay it all back, and she was really embarrassed, she said, after all the time had passed, and really ashamed. And she had talked about how she'd been in the mental health field for over 30 years, volunteering, doing wellness supports and training, life coach. She was about to obtain her doctorate in education and community care and counseling, specializing in trauma. And the board did say that ultimately she would be approved. She did a couple things, like a mental health assessment. She has to be fit to practice. She must follow any additional conditions that the board decides they want to set. And she has to take an ethics course from a KCREP accredited program, and all these things she has to do within 12 months. And hopefully then she could get her LPCA licensure if she follows through in doing all of those things within the 12 months. And then the last example I found, so this person provided substance abuse and counseling services at a private practice, and her license got revoked because she pled guilty to a conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud involving defrauding the Medicaid program. She actually ended up serving time in prison and had to pay money as well. She was released, and then she was denied for her LPCA. So all of these people were applying for licensure, then got denied, and then wanted to file against that and kind of plead their case. And that's what happened in all these scenarios. So all of these court cases are from them saying, I want to get the licensure, like, what can I do? Let me plead myself. So yeah, anyway, she was paying the money back as best as she could. She had to surrender her license. And basically it came down to, she had a witness that came and said that, you know, this person was of great value to the community, that she knew that she would just jump back in and helping people when everything was over. She had that a lot of this happened because it was just a lack of knowledge and experience in business and management, but that she had really mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of those things had developed a lot throughout the whole process, and she really learned through her imprisonment you know, what others have to go through and the embarrassment that follows you out of it, that you also have to work through. She said that ultimately she wanted to become a mediator, and that she would not become self-employed again, I guess, going forward. But that even since all of it happened, she'd continually taken ethics courses and leadership management and data analyst seminars, and eventually it basically said that the board decided she must take another KCREP accredited ethics course. She has to complete the fitness for practice evaluation, submit documents showing all of that, and do 6 months of counseling, get a supervisor, and lastly that she has to have a monthly report given to this ethics investigator every single month, documenting what's happening in her counseling sessions. So a lot of information, but basically I was really shocked, honestly. I did not realize that things like this were happening, and I was realizing how important this ethics class is and how much I've learned, because there was just so many themes. I mean, it was just, bottom line, ethics are so important. It's important that first and foremost you always are honest. You know, in the first example we saw that she attended training, or she didn't attend trainings and said she did. You know, that's a very obvious ethical issue, and so much could have been avoided if she didn't lie about that. You know, maybe if she had taken a step back and noticed that she was becoming impaired, she was overwhelmed at work, she was overwhelmed, you know, in life, and maybe, you know, she had needed to take a step back from that, but instead she just submitted documents falsely, you know, and it got the best of her. I think the board just wants to ensure that the counselors are honest and that they take necessary precautions to always protect the clients and stay educated and to provide self-care for themselves. You know, that is just as important. As counselors, we are pouring into other people. We have to pour into ourselves. We have to be self-aware of when things are getting tough and when we need to take a step back. Otherwise, we will not be as efficient as we could be. And so I thought all three of these situations were very applicable to what we've been talking about. We have issues of continuing education, record-keeping issues, confidentiality issues. Even though the second example, you know, her embezzlement charges were from a different profession. But then I looked at our ACA codes and what we were talking about in terms of confidentiality and securing records and making sure that you're always keeping things in a secured place. And it was applicable to her situation. Had she done that and had a safe place for these checks, none of what happened would have happened, or the chances would have been a lot lower. So even though this wasn't, even though this ACA code is for, you know, the counseling profession, it could have been applicable to her situation in the other profession. And then the insurance fraud. So lastly, I'm just going to read each of the 3 codes that I found that I think are applicable to the scenarios in which ones were violated, and what the ACA Code of Ethics says about counselor impairment. About counselor impairment, code C2G says that impairment counselors monitor themselves for signs of impairment from their own physical, mental, or emotional problems, refrain from offering or providing professional services when impaired. They seek assistance for problems. They seek assistance for problems that reach the level of professional impairment, and if necessary, they limit, suspend, or terminate their responsibilities until it's determined that they can safely return to work. Counselors or safely resume their work. Counselors assist colleagues or supervisors in recognizing their own professional impairment, provide consultation and assistance when warranted with colleagues or supervisors showing signs of impairment, and intervene as appropriate to provide as appropriate to prevent imminent harm to clients. Sorry. And then the 3 codes I found, code C2F was the code that was violated in the first scenario, which is recognizing the need for continuing education, acquiring a reasonable level of awareness of information in the fields, maintaining competence in the skills you use, remain informed regarding best practices. So this was violated essentially because she was supposed to be doing continuing education and she didn't. She lied about it. Code B6B, confidentiality of records and documentation. Counselors ensure that records and documentation kept in any medium are secure and that are only authorized persons have access to them. So, like I said, even though she was in a legal profession and not a counseling profession, this code, you know, is basically one that was violated. And that's what kind of came back around to her. She wasn't being able to get licensed because she had these embezzlement charges from the situation that happened. And code G4A, accurate results counselors plan, conduct, and report research accurately. Counselors do not engage in misleading or fraudulent research, distort data, misrepresent data, or deliberately bias their results. They describe the extent to which the results are applicable for diverse populations. So that was for the 3rd scenario in which she got the fraudulent charges. So all in all, I think this assignment really showed me how applicable everything we were learning in this course is, because these violations are clearly things that we've talked about in the chapter readings. And again, it was just kind of shocking to me seeing what people were not getting licensed for, things that people were lying about. It was just really eye-opening. So yeah, that is my blog for ethical violations and board discipline. Thank you guys so much.